I'm Lloyd Holiday, and this is the Cost of a Thing podcast. Thanks for listening in today. So what happened to that great standard of living that we used to enjoy here in America in the 1960s and even into the 1970s? Well, that's what the Cost of a Thing podcast is all about, and that's what I'm going to be talking about here. Okay, today's podcast is going to be about road rage, a very difficult and dangerous problem that we have here in America today. And I want to talk about two aspects of road rage in particular, and one is what I remember about road rage in the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s. And then the other is how road rage and this kind of behavior while driving and otherwise, how it has lowered our standard of living. Okay, well, probably all of us have experienced road rage by now. I know I have many times. And it usually starts with a tailgater that's getting on your bumper too close. And you see them back there and they're angry that they can't get by you. You can see their face in the rearview mirror. And I got to tell you, I've seen some of the most angry faces, almost maniacal faces in my rearview mirror. If that guy behind me determines that I'm not going fast enough, or I've done something else, maybe I've done something that I didn't realize, and this guy's mad back there. And that's how it usually starts. And with me, that's how it usually ends, because I end up pulling off the road and letting them go by when I see that behavior going on. And usually that ends it. So you got to be aware. What I do is I watch that rear view mirror and say, hey, is this guy in a big hurry? And usually people are nowadays. And I watch their behavior. Are they getting close? Are they getting angry? And if I see that, as soon as I can pull off the road and let them go by, I let them go. Get them out of there. Chances are the next guy won't be as angry even if you're going a few miles under the speed limit. These guys think they can control what the other drivers do. And some of these people, they think that if you're not going exactly that speed limit or higher, that you're in their way and you're blocking them from living. You're stopping them from doing what they want to do in life. You are the problem in their lives at that moment. And they're going to let you know it, and they're going to do anything they can do to get you out of their way as fast as they can and make it as uncomfortable as they can on you by just riding right on your bumper. Maybe at 70 miles an hour, they'll sit right on your bumper. I've seen it. And just give you the dirtiest looks and, gestures or whatever else they can do to make you as uncomfortable as possible. So you will pull over and get out of their way. And then they think maybe they've won the situation or whatever. But with me, it's not about winning or losing. It's just about getting to where I want to go without getting in a wreck or having some other trouble along the way. Certainly, I don't want any trouble with road ragers because, as we see, they're very dangerous. They can kill people. A lot of these guys have guns in their cars. And as we saw, the tragedy in Los Angeles, and I think it was in Orange County down there a few weeks ago, where a 6-year-old boy was shot in the back while he was sitting in his SUV with his mother, driving, and I think he was in the back seat. Some guy got mad as a road rager and something happened. I don't know the whole story, but he shot into the car and happened to kill the poor little boy there. And this happens all the time. You see this happening all the time. I don't know how many murders are caused by road rage like this, but there's a good number of them. I hear about them, quite often. So this is a very dangerous problem. And the best thing to do, like I said, as I do, is I get out of their way, let them go. Don't engage. I don't gesture back. If I do it underneath the dash so they can't see me gesturing them. You don't want to escalate the situation because these guys might be looking for an excuse to go off the deep end, to go off their rockers and kill somebody or just do something crazy and destructive and self-destructive too. They may be looking for a reason. They may be looking for somebody to act out on. And you don't want to be that person. These road ragers are angry people. Maybe they've got something else going on in their lives that's making them angry, and they're going to take it out on you, the hapless driver that's just driving down the road trying to get to the grocery store or whatever. I calculated up one time about 1 out of 8 people in the United States or anywhere in the world is going through some difficult circumstance in life, either a death of a family member, a major divorce, a job loss, maybe they got fired or laid off, maybe they got all kinds of money problems. People out there got a lot of problems. So about 1 out of 8 people is going through one of these very difficult things. Some of these could be the road ragers, or they could just be very angry people in general. And some of these road ragers are bullies. We've all seen bullies out there in our lives, and they're the type of people who like to intimidate others and push them around. And some of these types will do it just for the sport or the thrill of it, and you can become the pawn in their game for the day. And or there's other people that like conflict and drama, and they may be part of the road rage community. Everything's a community nowadays, even the road ragers. And there's some people that I call just tail riders. They just want to get in close behind you, and I don't know if they think they're going to get in your wind draft and get better gas mileage or what, but they just enjoy tail riding. They'll just sit there, and they're not really road ragers, they're just tail riders. And they'll just sit there right behind you. And of course, I'd pull over and let those guys get them off my tail too if I see them. But I've looked back in my rearview mirror, and I don't know if you've seen the movie The Graduate, the scene in the church where Benjamin goes into the church and stops the wedding and gets Elaine to run back to the back of the church. And she's getting married at the front of the church to some other guy, and he's back in the back of the church. You'd have to watch the scene, but if you've seen it, you know what I mean. And then all the people in the church, they focus on their faces, and it's this real angry look, this terrible angry look that all the people in the church have, the mother, the father, and then they run away and get in a bus, and I guess they end up getting married, and that's the end of the movie. But that's the kind of faces I've seen in my rearview mirrors. Very angry. You look in the rearview mirror and you'll see those graduate angry faces. I call them the graduate faces. And I'm sure everybody else has seen it if you bother to look in your rearview mirror when you're being road raged by a tailgater. You'll see those faces. And of course, it seems that the road ragers have forgotten all about the great advantage of the automobile and how fast it gets us places, maybe 100 times faster than if we had to walk or go by horse and carriage like they had to do in the very recent past. We can cruise places at 70, even 80 miles an hour now in some areas are the speed limits. We get there so much faster. You can drive across the United States in a couple of days in a car if you want to, the entire country. Something that took months and months of very difficult hardship for people to do just a little over 100 years ago. They had to go by oxen and horse and their covered wagons. And the road ragers have completely forgotten about that and how great it is to be able to get there. Even if you have to slow down to 60 or 50, you're still going to get there hundreds of times faster than you could walking. Now in the old days, if they had walked, well, they'd be so tired at the end of the day, they'd be too tired to get mad. But now they're in that car and they got every convenience in there, and it's very easy to get amped up real quick on your anger. In the old days, the pioneers, if they just got there without dying of some disease or other hardship along the way, running out of water, food, they were just happy to get there. Nowadays, the road ragers, that's all gone out the window with them. And, when the road rager gets there a few minutes early, even if they do beat you and get there, 5 minutes early, 10 minutes early, what are they going to do? Sit down and watch TV a few minutes earlier than they were going to? It's always that they've got some urgency. They've got an urgency. They got to get there. They got to get there fast and fast. I doubt they have anything that urgent that when they get there, they're not all surgeons that have to get to the operating table to save that life, get there a few minutes early. Nah, they're going home, probably. They're probably going home, or they're going to sit around the house an extra 5 minutes. The urgency's really not there. They're just probably creating that urgency in their minds. And I can't tell you how many times there's been a road rager or a guy who wants to pass me real fast and get around me, and I move over and let him go. I can't tell you a number of times I've pull up to the next light a few miles down the road, and I'm at the light, and I'm actually 2 or 3 cars ahead of them, and they're in the other lane. And we just kind of laugh. That's what usually ends up happening. It's not like they even get anywhere first place. Now, as far as in the 1960s, as a kid growing up, I don't remember seeing road rage. I don't remember seeing people, giving gestures to my father or mother while they were driving around, or cutting them off or tailgating them very severely like they do nowadays. I don't remember seeing any of that as a kid, and I would remember it. I know I would. I mean, I don't remember my dad getting out of the car and fighting people on the road. Well, they just drove on the road and they seemed to get where they wanted to go, and there wasn't a lot of that stuff. They would even have commercials on TV. Don't tailgate. And signs on the sides of the road. Tailgating is illegal. I don't see any of that anymore. I mean, I see even the police tailgate sometimes. It's pretty widespread out there. So I didn't see it in the 1960s, and even in the 1970s there wasn't a lot of that. And in the 70s, they lowered the speed limit. I think Jimmy Carter, because of the energy crisis at the time, lowered the speed limit to 55 miles an hour maximum across the whole country. And I think that toned it down too. I think that kept the tension off the road and made driving a little more enjoyable and a little easier. And of course, back then there wasn't as many people. There's almost twice as many people now in the United States as there was back in the 1960s and 70s. So that adds a lot of stress to it also, the crowding, and they really haven't improved the roads that much since then, since the 60s and 70s. So you're pumping twice as many people across the same infrastructure and roads that you had back then. So that does add a little tension to the roads too. Then in 1994, Bill Clinton was president, and I think that is the year he lifted the 55 mile an hour maximum speed limit in the United States. And now you see the states have got 70, and I see 80 miles an hour in some of the states in the Midwest as the maximum speed limit now. And in the Midwest, even the truckers, the big semis, go 80 miles an hour on the interstates. So back in the 1960s and 70s, what I remember is driving was a lot less stressful, less tension, and a much nicer experience overall. I don't remember any road rage back in those years. Now, does road rage lower our standard of living? Sure, I think it does. I think that makes our lives a little worse. It's not really a financial reduction in standard of living. Road rage lowers our standard of living, not financially, as I said, but by lowering our quality of life. But it's a reduction in standard of living, because you're going to go out there and you might run into one of these guys and make driving a more tense and stressful experience. And if you run into one of these guys, it can be an actual nerve-wracking experience. You can be threatened by these people. And if it's not a direct threat, it can be certainly a feeling of being threatened. So I think that kind of behavior while driving does lower our standard of living in that way. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, and as we can see, road rage does lower our standard of living by lowering our quality of life, and it really is a part of the coarsening of our society since the 1970s or so, and changes the attitudes of the people in society where they accept and allow this kind of bad behavior like road rage and others. And then follows from that, there's the lax law enforcement where they don't really crack down on these guys, and it just goes on. And that leads to more of the same bad behaviors. From what I can see, I don't think that this is going to get better in the near future. I think look for it to get worse. Thank you for listening in today. And until next time, this is Lloyd Holiday signing off.